Dear friends, today we are going to see education as a tool of social change. I remember a very famous quote by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, and I think it is one of the best and apt educational quote on education, especially women's education in India. He says, if you educate a man, you educate an individual. However, if you educate a woman, you educate a whole family. Women empowered means Mother India empowered. We have Mahatma Jyotirao Phule says, education is that which demonstrates the difference between what is good and what is evil. Any revolutions that have taken place in our history, education was the basis of it. Now in 1948, when India and all the world came together and prepared this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which clearly mentions the right of education as a fundamental right for every child, and therefore free and compulsory primary schooling is a must in the world. International Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights in 1977 itself it identified four components in people's right to education. They are one is available, second is accessible, third acceptable, and fourth adaptable. These are the four areas of education which is mentioned. Now in 1990, UN came up with Education for All, an idea which makes education to every citizen in every society, and every government must be committed to education. We have in the Sustainable Development Goals also we see out of the 17 goals, very many are on education of the people. Now, in 1990, when it declared, it's concentrated on six major areas. That is, one, early childhood care. Second, free and compulsory primary education of good quality. Three, learning needs of all young people and adults are met through equitable access to appropriate learning and life skill programs. The fourth one is increased adult literacy. Fifth one is eliminate gender disparities. And sixth one is improve all aspects of quality education. When we look at education as a social enterprise, the objective of education mainly comes out in three areas. One is human relations, second is economic efficiency, and third is civic knowledge. In fact, in 1990, UNDP stated that education is one of the five emergencies of human development. The others are being health, nutrition, the environment, employment, and political and economic freedom. But actual scenario, what we see in the world is something different. After many decades of effort by United Nations, money given through World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and Asian Development Bank, African Development Bank, and of late we have the BRIC Bank and so on, actually is getting worse day by day. More than 15 million children in the world have affected AIDS. In 80% of them are in Africa. The rights of millions of children are violated by trafficking, labor, abuse, and neglect. Birth of about 50 million children are not registered in each year and unable to access schooling and basic services. At global level, what we see today is very alarming. It's poverty in the economic front, armed conflict, that is the politically we can say, unequal distribution of resources, which is a very economic level, and lack of gender equity, which is social, are the major constraints continuing world over. About 1 in 4 children under the age of 5 are underweight. In South Asia, 60% of children in the poorest areas are underweight compared to 25% of children in the richest household. Actually, when we look at what are the major reasons for this, I think I see the failure of governance as the root cause. What we experience today is a weak governance system in every aspect of the society. Governance can be seen as the exercise of economic, political and administrative authority to manage a country's affairs at all levels. Good governance ensures that political, social and economic priorities are set forth and there will be broad consensus in society that the voices of the poorest and the marginalized, the most vulnerable, are heard in decision making over the allocation of development resources. Education definitely is the most powerful tool of change, which can initiate changes in any society. Now, building awareness of the self, society and human welfare more and more rests on right education. Education is considered as the best strategy of initiating, achieving and sustaining progress and development. Moreover, education can mitigate disparities in society and among people. In short, education is the most powerful tool of achieving what we ought to achieve. What we experience today in the market-driven economies are the efforts to sell the knowledge, the education, the experiences, the skills and so on in the open market. The market mechanism is not concerns of the human angles as it emphasizes rely on the level of achievements from the supply and demands of the marketable products and services. Each and everything including the human relations, their knowledge and skills are considered as economic commodities in the market-driven economy, which is a very serious point all educationists must reflect upon. Hence, whether we can expect social responsibility from policymakers, administrators and politicians especially in the current economic system to make them socially responsible for education seems a myth. Therefore, a mechanism is necessary to change the present world order to a system where those leaders concerned about human beings, their knowledge, the social relationship, human dignity. In such a context, education can play a vital role to pave the way for social development. There are two types of education. Social change happens through education, and it can be of progressive or positive or regressive or negative. A positive change can happen when the social evils changes to scientific thoughts, and negative society will see emergence of new evils as we see all around us today. What are the nature of social change? The nature of social changes are, one thing we must understand is it is a universal phenomenon. The spreading of social change is not uniform. Variations in the speed of social change happens. Unpredictability is there in social changes. Results in interaction of number of factors, and modifications and replacement also takes place in social changes. And when we talk about social changes, there are 5 aspects we must understand: social, economic, political, religious, scientific and technological changes. Now, what are the factors affecting social change? In briefly, we don't have time to explain, but in briefly, we see cultural factors are there, geographical factors, environmental factors, economic factors, factor of migration, technological factor, factor of population, psychological factor, ideological factors, factor of war, diffusion of cultures, urbanization, visual and print media, westernization, materialistic attitude, democratization, secularism, legislation, action of exceptional individuals, industrialization, and so many other things. But in spite of all these areas of changes, we must understand there are obstacles in social changes. And obstacles of social change, I can point out 10 obstacles. Number one is superstitious beliefs which people have. Conservative nature of we don't want to change. We are comfortable with the comfort zones. Cultural and religious fanaticism which is happening all over the world. Castes, classism, institutionalized religion, fear. Institutionalized religion means more or less ritualistic religions. Fear, regionalism, parochialism, isolation, etc. These are the block of any social change. And we must understand at the end the role of education in social change. What way education can change? First and foremost, education perpetuates eternal values. It also promotes capacity to welcome social change. Evaluation of social change is possible through education. And transmission of culture, removal of obstacles, increasing the areas of knowledge, leadership role. Of course, in the educated society, a progressively educated society will have better leaders. And spreading of a lot of knowledge, because the new areas will come, the modern ideas will be absorbed in education, and new ways of thinking will be emerging. Stabilizing democratic values, control channelizes and modifies thoughts of new generation. School as a workshop for citizens training. It's not only intellectual training, it's also social, political, psychological, physical, spiritual, moral, and many other aspects. And therefore, education also makes people to understand the social evils that are all around us. National and international understanding. It's not only parochial or limited or regionalistic thinking, it will make us a global thinking. Equity among masses. Equity among masses means equal opportunity for all. And social awakening happens to education. In fact, the primary purpose of education is to awaken the citizens socially, and a natural national development will happen. Now, we can see this pandemic period. As a conclusion, I'm saying pandemic is largely our own making, because we failed in many areas. We have failed in educating and empowering our people. We have failed in changing the society. Humanity followed what is hostile in our own interest. The climate crisis, pandemic is part of it. Ecosystem is destroyed. Our natural wealth is neglected. Our interconnectedness is broken. I think the market-oriented, market-led educational system that is prevailing in our society must change, and we educationists must look forward to have a new way of thinking, new way of teaching and learning. Otherwise, the society will end up in disaster. I think education is actually the primary movement of change, and we educationists, thinkers, writers, enlightened citizens of this nation, etc., must enhance the role of education in social changes.